change your mind, change your habits, change your life.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor, where we discuss 5D concepts to help you thrive in a 3D world. Today, we are here with Nadia Jarfi. She is a quantum human design specialist and has a wealth of knowledge to share with us. So, Nadia, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Unplugged with Taylor.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
And I want to just jump right in and tell everybody listening in, what is quantum human design?
Loaded question alert. So quantum human design is an energy body graph system. So it's drawing from a lot of different ancient and esoteric sciences. You've got quantum physics, you've got the Chinese I Ching, the Judaic Kabbalah, the astrological system, and the Hindu chakra system. And we've kind of got this like modern day synthesis of these sciences that come together, give you an idea of what you can tap into, what your potential is, and begin to like help you tell a better story about who you are. Quantum human design is for the people who are sick of telling a disempowering story about who they are.
I love that so much. As we were talking before, there's so many people, and as a person who's been in the education realm, both with adults and children for 15 years, seeing how many people are living in their adult life still tethered to the stories that they learned about themselves in traditional schooling. I'm bad at this. I'm not great at school, all based on subjective grades. So they've decided that because of this, myopic lens of what is valued in our education system, there are so many gifts that people have that they are not even aware of.
Or they're not allowed creativity, right? So we come from a world where we've tried to use science to make things very like materially understood. And our systems are created to support that materialistic structure in the way we understand our reality. When you start working with energetic systems and quantum systems, you're really beginning to question what aspect of what I'm co-creating in this existence is actually affected not just by what I'm doing physically and what I'm choosing to do physically, but what I'm actually thinking. What am I actually saying? Who do I believe I am? And it's really a moment of questioning. It's not for the faint of heart, I would say. But, I found in my own journey, like with this system, it has been so much push and pull of really learning to like love humanity even for its dark parts, because I'm a part of that and I have dark parts. And so there's a radical kind of self-acceptance that you're taught because you get the language. That's Absolutely. The thing. It's this can provide language that can help you connect more deeply with your soul and kind of get on this kind of track to, your purpose isn't the thing you do. The purpose is the frequency that you hold. It's the way that you be. It's the way you show up. It's the parts of yourself that you deny, so that they can come to light and be honored. So it's been just such a healing journey, as we were talking about. You have to go through, I had to go through all of my own conditioning and all of my own experiences with kind of breaking down and learning the system before I trusted myself to hold it for others. And I'm so passionate about just activating people and helping them see how powerful they truly are, because we're capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
I read something that said that the more that you shame something or try to rid yourself of a part of you, the harder it's going to hang on. And so I loved what you said about one of the reasons that you love quantum human design and where it sort of stands out, if you will, from some other systems is that shadow integration piece of it.
Yeah, and the quantum system does like vary a little bit from the traditional system. So when you look at traditional human design, which is an incredible kind of like download from Ra Uruhu, he was in Ibiza, Spain during a supernova event, and all of a sudden he was flooded with all this light and information, and over the course of 8 days, he kind of like downloaded this as a blueprint for humanity to evolve. And one of the beautiful things I'll just kind of side note add is he said, this is for the children. This is for the future and the children too. So it's a way to begin to understand ourselves. And with that origin story, God, I lost track. Hold on.
That happens to me all the
Oh my
time.
gosh, where was I before that?
It's when you're the most passionate.
Yeah.
It's when you're like, yeah,
I was
and
like,
this, and it's like, wait a minute.
I was on to it, and then I lost it.
Shadow integration.
Yes. Okay. So with traditional human design, that version of the system, that first initial version, that was written to really kind of jar people into waking up. It's like, you're going to look at this dark part of yourself or this part of yourself, and it's time to wake up. And that is so incredibly necessary. But what we kind of work with through my teacher, Karen Curry Parker, with quantum human design, is that we're going to look now at, we're at a point where kind of like as a collective, we're kind of jarred and waking up as a collective, right? You feel it, I feel it, the state of the world. There is this kind of awareness that we're kind of on the verge of this new way of being or this new way of thinking, or we're, becoming disunified because we're going to circle back around to unity, right? And so how can we tap into empowering language and speak to what's called the authentic self versus the not self? And a lot of that is understood because of modern science in quantum physics and epigenetics. Quantum physics, because, I'm sure a lot of people here are probably familiar, and if not, please look up things like the double slit experiment, simulation theory.
I love that one.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
I call it the cosmic simulation. Yeah. And, it's this idea that, reality doesn't happen until we observe it, but we can also encode it with what we think. Like our brains, for example, we have this amazing neurological system that is activated, and the way that we visually process. We can only visually process 1% of what we actually see. That reticular activating system that filters our visual processing is determined by our conditioning, by the story we tell ourselves of who we are.
Which is why sometimes when people take psychedelics, or also with, I've done psychedelic therapy and ketamine assisted therapy.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about ketamine therapy was how things don't look. You're awake and you're looking, but they don't look the way that they actually are, because it interferes with exactly what you were just speaking about, which kind of can be a little scary if you haven't done your research and don't realize what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that it is difficult for some people to at first grasp the idea that what we experience is not all there is, and that we have power within ourselves to take part in what we create. And it's not about disallowing victimhood. I like to be really clear on kind of the strategy that we have to take as humans to heal. And I think that there is a little bit of conversation in the spiritual world that bypasses like what it means to feel like a victim in something. So I think it's really important that as we begin to look at our conditioning, the painful experiences that we've had, the ways we've been treated by somebody or family, the hurt that we experience, the first step in that is allowing yourself to have it.
Yes.
Know that you were wronged, and that isn't something that you want to create in your life. Then from there, you evolve beyond that.
I'm so glad that you said that. Because I've had this conversation, and I went through a phase where I kind of felt guilty about the times where you could just feel the anger when I spoke about my experiences, even like early on episodes of this podcast. And the realization I came to was that if I hadn't allowed myself that victim moment, that wow, it really was that bad, my ego, that egoic part of my mind, would have never released enough for me to even see my shadows. It would have kept its guard up and not allowed me to see just how far off my path that I was if I hadn't given myself that that sympathy. Yeah. And so to me, that's a very important in my personal journey. I would have never made it this far without that part of it.
Absolutely. I would say part of my introduction to this system, and looking at the things in my life that happened to me, the first step was, wow, I had some things happen to me that I've really denied myself admitting they really happened, which is a whole different, like sometimes people get really caught in this happened to me, this keeps me back from my power. I had kind of the opposite. I had things happen to me and I was like, no, that never happened.
It's fine. Or
Back to
someone else has it
day-to-day.
worse.
Yeah. And I think there's space for both. This is why we live in such a vast, we have such a vast array of emotional experiences that we get to have on this planet. We kind of sign up to come here and decide, you know, all we get access to all the things, all the experiences, all the emotions, all the ways it can happen. And, you know, some people believe in contracts. I believe, you know, that there are definitely things that are fated to happen. And then I think there's a really good amount of free will that we get to have choice. Choice is really important. Choice is really important with the quantum human design system too. Talking about kind of the evolution. So Karen Curry Parker took it upon herself to evolve this system from Ra, the creator who she studied with for 2 decades and beyond. And it's this idea that as we evolve, we still get choice, even though there are things in our chart that maybe are a more difficult placement or a great placement or are in our unconscious versus our conscious. And we'll get into some of the nitty gritty too. But the key thing I always want to reiterate when we look at the quantum human design system is that this is not meant to be dogmatic. This is not meant to put you in a box. This is meant to show you the conscious parts of yourself that you can access and understand. And through beginning to understand those parts of yourself, you then get to have this variety, this flexibility, this understanding, and empowered to make choices that are more fulfilling for you in your life.
And I've had a session with you, and I think that that is such a great point. It's certainly not putting you in a box, because when you go through and explain the chart, it's validation.
Yeah.
Especially for those shadow parts that you've always felt like, or, you know, personally, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I like do this? Or why am I not, you know, especially when if you're on a career path that wasn't necessarily meant for you and you don't understand why you're having to force yourself to do things that just don't feel aligned and you're burned out. I know, like, rigidity in schedule.
Oh, I love that you brought this up. This has been my biggest lesson. I call myself a recovering control freak. Oh my gosh, the way that I used to just pack before I knew it was a generator, and I really want to talk about the types. But before I knew that about myself, I was just like, pack the schedule, wake up, gym this time, work this time. I didn't leave any space for creativity, no space for magic, no space for me to find things to respond to. This gave me a way to step back and look at my life. And I think this is probably a great segue into, like, let's talk about the actual, the types. Like, what are the energy types? So similar to astrology, there's 12 zodiac signs. In quantum human design and traditional human design, there are 5 energy types. The energy type is like the first step in going down the well of this information, if you will. And so the energy type is really, really connected to, what does your aura or your electromagnetic field, how does that move throughout the world and connect with the rest of humanity? And I think it's really important that even when you start to learn about your own type, learn about the other ones too, because the more we understand ourselves and begin to understand each other, it really helps us grant grace to people.
Yes.
It helps us love people holistically and really invite them in, because then you kind of like, no, like, oh, okay, they're manifestors. They kind of gotta, like, they don't like to be told what to do. They kind of just, you know, go for it. So there's 5 energy types. The first energy type are called the manifestors. They are 9% of the population. In quantum human design, we also call them the initiator. So some of the key things you'll learn when you're learning about your energy type, there are 3, like, kind of the big 3. So there's your energy type, your authority, and your strategy. We're going to talk specifically about the type and the strategy today, and then I'll go into a little bit more about authority later. So there's the manifestors. They're the initiators. Their strategy is to initiate with right internal timing. So they are these kind of like powerhouse 9% of the population. They're directly plugged into creative intelligence. So there's a low percentage of them on the planet because they're kind of funneling in creative ideas for us to put into action. So you'll probably hear this and be like, is that a manifestor? Maybe that's a manifestor. Don't jump to conclusions yet, because there's also a hybrid type that includes the manifestor energy. So you've got this super initiatory energy. They're plugged into creativity. They're here to catalyze. They're really here to catalyze. The thing about their aura, though, is their aura has a special filter on it. And what this filter does is it filters out people who they are not here to catalyze. Kind of going back to what you said, a lot of the thing that this system can do is really give you permission and parts of like accepting parts of yourself that you've denied and kind of that validation. I find with manifestors, this is really, really powerful to learn because they have questioned their whole life why they haven't fit in certain rooms, why they've struggled in certain communities, why they've been ostracized by certain people or feeling abandoned. And once they begin to understand that, oh, this is actually a filtration system that pulls people away from me, that I'm not here to make an impact in their life, they can begin to love themselves differently. So the manifestors, 9% of the population. Then we have the generators, 37% of the population's, I'm a generator. Beyonce is a generator. So
I love that.
We're alchemists. Like we're truly alchemists. Like we're here to like take the inspirations of the world that we see, and we know how to make that form. Like we know how to create it, and it can be created in the mind, created through technology, created physically. There are architects that are generators. Really, it's not confined to job titles, but like you do find people that like to work with their hands or like create things. Typically tend to be generators. And so the strategy for the generator, which was, it's funny, we're majority of the population and the world is kind of not created for us. It's to wait to respond. So what I find a lot, and I can speak mostly from my own story, is that as a generator, we live in a world that is like, let's go do it. You want to do that thing. You want to create it. You've got the idea. You've got to chase after it.
Very
right
individualistic.
now.
You don't need other people.
Yeah.
Competition.
Yeah. You've got to chase after opportunities. You've got to make it happen. That is the programming of our society in the Western world. That is the complete opposite of the generator aura. We have a very inviting aura. People want to give us things to respond to. And I will say it's an interesting, like, we talk about that wiggle period where like you're trying to trust the system. I know I was trying to trust the system before I could teach it. And also like kind of still had one foot in like pushing things forward and at work trying to like be the mover and shaker that I thought everybody wanted me to be, and having to like put all my ideas in the room and people weren't hearing me. And it's because I really had to learn this kind of like feminine, not beta, but it's like step back for a second and see what actually will show up for you in your reality.
Yes.
Start getting curious about what is coming towards you instead of constantly having to push towards it. And a big, like, important disclaimer here, that does not mean that you don't get to have creative ideas that you make happen. But in waiting to respond and trusting that you will have a thing to respond to, your ideas will come in, and then the outer reality will actually show you that that's what you should do. And then that is the filter of keeping you from jumping into things that you shouldn't do.
I think, like, in my career, would get all these great big ideas, and then when other people wouldn't share my excitement about the idea,
well, you're next, and you're half a
that
generator.
would, like, shut me down.
Yeah, and so I'm glad. I would love to move into your energy type too, because so we've got the generators, 37% of the population, here to wait to respond, here to be the builders, bring inspiration into form. The next type is a hybridization of the manifestor and the generator. And so you've got this incredible ability. You all are here to wait to respond and then initiate. So again, we've just combined the strategies of the two. And I would say that, you know, you'll probably be able to speak more to this, but do you ever feel like you're saying, like you've got a great idea and you just have gone for it before you've been given a confirmation that you need to go for it?
So I have a question about that. The confirmation, what does that look like? So is the confirmation
Yes,
like,
question.
I have a great idea, and then suddenly someone says, like when I started the podcast, and then someone saying, oh, I have a studio. Are things like that happening? The confirmations when there are pieces are just naturally kind of starting to come together. Is that what you mean by waiting for the confirmation?
Absolutely. It's a trust in the outer reality. We call it the cosmic dance with the outer reality. And so I highly encourage the way that you experience the confirmation, let it be abstract. Don't pigeonhole it into like this person has to say it. It could be a billboard. It could be an Instagram ad. It could be you overheard a conversation at Starbucks. It could be you saw a quote somewhere that connected.
And that's that, when your intuition connected to your intuition, that was your confirmation.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. And, that's a fun journey too, because I found that sometimes I want way too many confirmations.
I'm like, give me another sign, just one more.
Can I get 10 more signs, please?
A clearer one.
And they're like, girl, we done sent you all the signs. So yeah, getting clear with trust again. That is the thing, is like this whole thing. It really invites you to analyze. Do you trust yourself? Can you try something different? And so the manifesting generator, you're all, one of your like really cool aspects is that you all are here to like speed up time in the way that things can be created, because you're also alchemists, you're also builders, you're also, how to take inspiration and turn it into form, but you know how to speed up the process. So again, talking about aspects of the Manny Gen that have been I feel like monumental for my clients, and then for you is like, it's okay to skip steps. You're not supposed to do it in order. You don't need to do one thing at a time. If you want to have a multifaceted career of bunch of different things and passions, that's correct for you. I think we come from a world that has told children their whole life, like, you focus on this one thing, you have this one job, and that one job has to fulfill you. And we really need to move away from that, especially for the manifesting generator.
I thought it was really fascinating that sometimes that's what we call ADHD can look like our manifesting generators.
Yeah. We had talked a little bit beforehand about this. Karen Curry Parker, my teacher, she's been a part of some research studies around this, and they're like pulling the charts of these children in these ADHD programs, and there's like a 99% rate of manifesting generators. So we've got like that's 33% of the population. So we got a lot of ADHD running rampant in this country to help us figure things out in this unique, creative way. I truly feel like we're in a creative revolution as a culture, as a society, as a planet.
I think social media, definitely has its pitfalls, but that has really opened up people's creativity. I mean, if you look out there at the things that people are bringing to life, there's some really talented people.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be able to like share that with others.
Yeah, and I feel like to add to that too, it's this idea that we're moving away from this idolized celebrity culture and into this sphere where you are a frequential creative being that is going to tap into this internet and these networks, and you're going to find people you resonate with, and that's what you're going to tune into instead of chasing after celebrities. That's part of Pluto and Aquarius too. When we talk about, this big shift that's happening with Pluto that happens every 15 to 20 years. And also, with quantum human design, we can talk about the 2027 prophecy here too. But just to finish out our energy types, because we did the manifesting generator, next are the projectors. And so projectors are about 20% of the population. They are here to be orchestrators and guides, and they have a very, very, very specific role. They are imprints of the future human. So they are here to teach us grace and slowing down and honoring the body and knowing that they can take in information and guide others that choose them. That's another group that has kind of like a filter on their aura that allows people choose them to lead, and then they come in and can guide people towards the future. And where we're headed as a collective. And projectors, I find projectors oftentimes when they don't know they're a projector, they maybe don't realize that they're a leader and that they can guide others. And I think we're all leaders and we're all students, but there's something with the projector. They can orchestrate what's necessary to be in resonance of the heart so that we can move forward.
So what does that look like for a person, like someone who is a projector and maybe doesn't realize it? Like what kind of things do you find that they gravitate towards?
Well, what I find, it's not the gravitation, it's that I find that they end up in really high stress, like environments, and that they work too hard because they don't realize that they're here to like delegate and be leaders and ideas. So then they burn their body out really fast. There's one more type, and then there's a correlation that I'll make that kind of that circles into this, because 3 of the energy types don't have what's called a defined sacral. So they're actually not here to do traditional work, and they don't have the same amount of energy.
And that's...
Yeah, this. So generators and manifesting generators are defined sacral. So the last energy type, which is the most rare, this is less than 1% of the population, that's going to be the reflectors. And so the reflectors, you name it, they're here to reflect. They're here to reflect back the community. And when we think about even, the way that societies are run, like let's say you're going to have a council to oversee like important delegating of tasks in a society, you would want to have a reflector on that committee, because the reflector is going to actually reflect back what the community is thinking and feeling and give you that information. Doesn't mean they don't have their own identity. They're very much some of the more creative, like unique people that you'll meet, but they are here to help reflect back what we need.
like liaisons of energy almost.
Yeah. And they have a very interesting strategy. Their strategy is to kind of like whatever idea or thing they want to do, they just have to wait a full lunar cycle. So they have to wait at least 28 days before they make big decisions. And kind of with these strategies too, the idea is that you use this to make decisions in life. And that's why I like the practicality of it. It takes a tangible, actionable way to make decisions. Like if I wanted to, when I wanted to come on the podcast with you, I needed to wait to respond to the opportunity, see how it felt in my body, and then let you know.
Well, I'm glad that you decided yes. I'm glad it was a yes.
Yeah, me too.
Is it true that I have a question about reflectors. Is it true that that's often your psychics, your intuitives, your...
No.
No?
No. Psychics and intuitives can happen across the board of all energy types.
What? Okay, so I know that's our super small...
We're all psychic and intuitive. Just.
But what is it? So I guess I'm trying to think, like, if it's such a small part of the population, like, what are some things have you had a lot of clients that ended up being?
There again, you're talking about a really rare.
Yeah.
I have a best friend that's a reflector.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you notice that, like, traits that she has that are part of her being a reflector?
Well, just kind of the aspect of she's extremely highly intuitive and highly nurturing. Like her ability to nurture and understand people.
Because you have to be super connected to people in order to be able to reflect them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I found, when I just got back from an overseas trip, and I feel like anytime we travel to a new place, I went to Egypt and was at all these sacred sites, and, you come back from trips like that and you're like, who am I now? Like you feel so changed on a cellular level, on a spiritual level. And I went for a walk with my reflector, and just like, I wonder what she's going to pick up on. And also like, what has she been up to? We were just able to connect. And she did have, talking about the psychic piece, as I didn't even give certain details about parts of the trip, and she reflected back at me experiences that I had.
Because she was that connected to your energy shift.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're very, very, I feel like everybody is really special, but definitely the reflectors, kind of going back to when we talk about the sacral energy. The sacral energy in the chart, each of these energy centers are going to be connected to a chakra, and then they're also going to be connected to these aspects of the expression of self. So I'll just start with the sacral, just because it's very potent in understanding the energy type specifically. The sacral manages the work and life force energy, resources, energy resource. And so when we talk about the difference in energy types, the generator and the manifesting generator will always have this defined. That is a key signature. With that definition of the sacral, you have basically what's called unlimited energy if you're doing things that you love. That doesn't mean you don't experience burnout. That doesn't mean you don't need rest. But typically when you're in the flow of your purpose and what, you're happy with what you're doing, it doesn't have to be your dream job per se, but you're happy, you're fulfilled, you're connected, you're going to have unlimited energy. When you don't have this defined, you have rest cycles built into your aura. So I find that people with this open, they may not know when enough is enough for their body, because everywhere that's open is an amplifier of energy. So they are amplifying the energy of the world that gives them the energy to work and do things. So in the beginning of learning about your type, if you're a type that has an open sacral, I always suggest, can you schedule in rest? It's not going to feel natural. It's not going to feel like you want to do it, but really getting yourself and your energy body used to tapping into rest. Again, that's kind of where we're headed. We're moving away from hustle culture. These energy types, the non-sacral beings, they're here to be the antithesis of hustle culture, really.
So you're saying that if it's colored in on here, it's defined. And if it's not colored in, it's undefined. So mine is defined, which means if I'm doing something that's aligned with my purpose, that I feel really connected to, I'm going to draw energy from that.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be your purpose either. It can just be like, my body says yes.
Okay.
It can be as simple as like, my body is happy, like I'm feeling good in doing this. I'm feeling good in where I'm
not
at.
forcing myself to do it.
Yeah.
But if it were to be undefined, explain to me what you mean by they're not going to realize that they need to rest.
So, great question. We'll go to the idea. So anything that is white, that is where we take in the energy of the world and we amplify it back out. So we experience the variability of it. That's where sometimes where our conditioning lies. When we look at conditioning through the quantum human design system, traditional human design typically only looks at what's white in the chart. We look at what's white in the chart on top of epigenetics, imprinting of parents and stuff like that. So anything that's open, you're taking in and you're amplifying back out.
So a lot of impressionability for any of the open. Yeah. Do you find sometimes people that have a lot of open centers and that maybe that shows up as like confused about a sense of self?
Totally, especially if we talk about the G and identity being open.
Yeah,
I can go into openness a little bit because it's actually really fascinating. So I want to like really nail in, like, we are humans having this beautiful, creative, explosive experience, and we can all be and do and have everything. We all have all of the chart. Yes. Like, I don't want to ever pigeonhole people into thinking, well, I don't have this gate and I don't have this, so I'm this. No, we all have all of it. However, you want to understand your energy, your type, and start understanding where you are defined, because where you're defined, when it's colored in, is what you have consistent access to. When we can begin to trust where we express consistently and begin to access those parts of ourselves that feel true and aligned, then we can go into these open areas and begin to like almost portal into what's possible, because we're going to experience them in variability. But how can you trust variable experiences and be flexible to that if it's coming in and you're amplifying it without knowing? And that's why it's so powerful for the manifester, for the projector, for the reflector, for them to begin to schedule in or create space to honor the body and let it rest. They'll begin to understand what that means, because it is not intuitive for them to slow down, but it's what they need, and it will become intuitive. It's usually not in the beginning, and then it's like, okay, it's like training wheels. You got to like put them on. And then we have some projectors that are, some of the younger kids now. My friend's daughter's a projector, and she's just like, I go at my own pace. She's already got it dialed in and aligned, and I'm just like, yes, girl, show us.
Yes,
show us what's possible.
That just speaks to how powerful this would be to like empower youth with this information about themselves and like help you better understand how to be a facilitator of learning. Like, so much that goes into that. But hearing you talk, I'm just like, that's so interesting to think like that the undefined centers, like if you had several undefined centers, that's got to be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think that you're feeling so much. I actually am pretty defined, similar to you. I have open the spleen and the will, and then everything else for me is colored in. So it's one of those things where everyone's made differently for a reason, and it's beautiful. And I find too, I love being around people that have, this is pretty rare to have the crown. Let me go through the chakras actually, so people know which is which. So 7 chakra system, many of you know, there's the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And so some really important pieces here. You do have a root center. It's going to start at the bottom. Similar to what we learn in like medical intuition in the chakra system, this is going to like dictate like stability, the collective unit, and also more importantly, this is where the pressure to create in the physical comes from in the chart. And so if someone's like you having this open is considered a pressure center. So I would be like, are you somebody that maybe kind of overworks your mind thinking that you have to like have things made right now and it's got to be physical now and it's got to be perfect right now? So we can work with that. You know, you can begin to understand that, oh, actually, the more you trust divine timing, the more this is going to begin to decondition. And then we've got the sacral, which we've talked about at length now, this idea that we have this work and life force energy, and that some of us have consistent access to that because we're here to kind of be that builder. And then some of us have that open because we're meant to honor rest and honor the body. And then the solar plexus did a mutation in 1781 and broke into 2 pieces. And what happened when we had this mutation was that we began to move away from this idea of like Newtonian physics and consciousness and kind of moving into more of that quantum realm, the energy realm. The Blavatskys come on the scene, the Teslas and things like that. And so the solar plexus broke into 2. So this is the spleen. This is where you'll understand different fears that you have, also places of intuition. And then the emotional solar plexus, this is where we will experience like emotional frequencies. And the emotional solar plexus plays a really key role in manifestation through the quantum mechanics of the chart, which I know you want to chat about later too. And then we've got the will and the G. So the heart and during the mutation broke into 2, or evolved, expanded into 2. The G and Identity Center, this is a really, I'm really working on a great workshop to work with this center specifically because this is where our ability to not only love the self lives, but it also helps us determine what emotional and loving frequencies we tap into to find our direction in life.
I would love, while we're on the heart, to talk a little bit about relationships and how understanding these centers in your chart can help you better understand your own needs and how you show up in relationships and how you show love. I think that there's so much value in that.
Well, and kind of the big thing here, it's like you have to love the self first. So if we're not honoring and loving these parts of ourselves and letting them express and really like showing up for who we are, how are we going to be able to show up for other people? Specifically with relationships, I would actually probably look more at the will.
At the will over here?
Because this is also part of the heart.
Because the heart split into 2 parts.
Well, and truly when it comes to relationships with quantum human design, there are ways that we can like put the charts together and see what your relationship dynamics are. But I really feel like the first step is like, what is your partner's energy type?
Yeah.
Like, are you a manifester that like has to initiate their ideas and like need, like the manifestors, I love them. So I gotta like use this fun analogy. They're kind of like a high-speed train and they're not really stopping to take on passengers when they need to do their creative thing. So it's like if you are married or with somebody that or friends with someone that's that energy type, it'd be good to know because then you grant them the grace. You get out of their way when they need to do stuff and you like can love them fully and not get irritated by their need to have that kind of like ripple energy to follow their truth. And I think that in relationships, we can like learn to honor one another through understanding our energy types and our needs. It gives us the language in relationships to ask for what we need. Where before we've kind of just like, well, I don't know, you didn't do the dishes last night. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's so easy to get caught up in like, why am I like this? Why do I need this? Why do I want to do this? Why does this not feel right to me? And I think it's interesting. So what does that look like when it's undefined versus defined?
Yeah. So, well, first, the G in identity we kind of talked about. That's ways to love yourself and also by working on that self-love, you find direction. The will is kind of like the ego, and where resources. So this is where like material resources would come from. Like, how do you experience that? So yours is open. So you have like variability in the ways that you'll generate resources, which is, you know, there is no right or wrong, right? Like some people, they'll be more consistent, and having this defined, only 1 in, I think, 8 people have it. So it's pretty rare. So this is going to be geared more towards like your ego and identity. And we talked about kind of like, yes, this is where when the emotional solar plexus is undefined, you are more highly empathic to people's emotions. But empathy is more than an emotional signature. We can have empathy and understanding for people's ego and identity and the way they show up or the way they are intellectually too. I think a lot of times we pigeonhole the word empathy into just understanding people from an emotional perspective, but we can have empathy in the entire spectrum of seeing what the human condition and what the human
understanding differences in people as a whole.
Yeah. And so yeah, this is going to be like if somebody wanted to like come in and be like, Nadia, I'm starting my own business. Can we run a chart for my business and then run my chart? And let's look at like the ways that I would need to pull resources in for that. Like we can totally do that. So there's a lot of like little fun areas that we can plug in. But I'm really big on working with the heart first.
So you think that that's really where it all starts?
Well, we'll talk about that because there's the mechanics. We're going to talk about some mechanics that I've learned through this system that are kind of like beyond, you know, we went through this whole law of attraction phase. So I want to kind of like touch on like where is the current paradigm around manifestation and why like people are paying thousands of dollars to go to boot camps to learn how to make money, and that it's just not one size fits all. And we'll talk about why. So then we've got the throat, which I think is kind of self-explanatory. We're talking about communication here. How can we communicate? And what's really, really, really cool about the throat is that when you have this defined and you have these connections of the throat to like different energy centers, it gives you an idea of different like voices that you have. So for me, I have the 16 to the 48, which is the channel of like enthusiasm. And so like when I'm jazzed about something, I'm speaking from the voice of enthusiasm.
I hear that. Yeah, I hear that in your passion for this.
And then I'm also connected to my heart through my throat, which gives me like this almost like this vulnerability and this tenderness because I feel so connected to who I am through what I say. And so like if I feel like I'm in a projection field and somebody doesn't see me or like process like what I'm saying properly and I've been speaking from my heart, I'm tender about that, you know? So like learning that has been so pivotal. And
does that make it easier for you to be vulnerable?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it taught me that speaking from my heart is a part of my like encoding, like, and again, we're all speaking from our heart, but consistently versus in a variable way. So me honoring that I need to be consistently speaking from the heart instead of just having, and you may experience because yours is not connected, you will speak from the heart in variable ways. It may not be like the same one voice where I know the one voice when I'm speaking kind of from my heart now, which is really fun. And then we've got the ajna or agna, the third eye, and the crown, which these are pretty connected because they can only connect to one another. One of my favorite things that I learned about the third eye and the crown is that these energy centers are not here to make decisions or find solutions. We spend so much time thinking in our head, how do we solve it? I've got to figure out how to do it. This is supposed to be the playground. We're supposed to use our minds to generate emotional experiences in the body, to play with ideas, to get curious, to look at inspiration, to bring in things from our higher self. And we're supposed to like let that be kind of like the breeding ground of that and let that have fun. And then let the other energy centers in the world show us the rest. We spend so much time trying to figure things out in our culture and thinking that we have to like do it and go it alone. But really, again, we're in this co-creation with our world. So through this co-creation, can we begin to trust that things are going to show up and that we'll need to know what we need to know when we need to know it? And if we don't have all the information right now, that's okay.
So are you saying, so the heart is more like that real decision-making center, like just everything's coming from the heart, and this up here is more like creativity, ideas, drawing in from your surroundings, but we end up focusing so much.
We try
in
and
our
figure it out
heads.
up here,
Yes,
instead of co-creating with it. And so the heart has what's called a magnetic monopole. So in quantum human design, and when you look at the torus field, we're talking about a one-sided magnet that exists in our heart, and it's calibrated a couple of different ways. But when we want to talk about, I want to create a more fulfilling reality. I'm not happy with my job. I have a disempowering story about who I am. I can't shake this unconscious habit. It's like I know better consciously, but I'm really still struggling to break it in the unconscious mind. What we can do is we can do these exercises and these meditations, where what we do is we start in the mind and start to think about inspiring ways to evoke emotional energy. And that's how this works. So you're using the mind, you're evoking emotional energy that then goes to the emotional solar plexus. Now the emotional solar plexus is creating this emotional experience. And that's kind of like a step that gets skipped sometimes. People want to go straight to, I wrote my affirmations and I thought I'm going to have the thing, so I'm going to have the thing. And it's like, okay, did you let yourself feel what it would feel like to be completely supported? Did you let yourself feel what it would feel like to be honored and cherished by people that love you? Did you let yourself feel what it would feel like to not have to think about your bills?
Let me ask you this, because I find this I love talking about, because now we're getting into manifestation, co-creating with the universe. And it's obviously not as simple as just, saying, okay, this is what it's going to be and speaking it into existence. There's that you have to feel it on a cellular level so that you can then align yourself with that frequency. But if you have never experienced that level of self-esteem or self-belief or self-love or, being without fear, how can you create that in your body if you have not experienced it before? What does that look like?
That's a great question. And I can really only speak from my own personal experience with using this method. And it did take some time. It took consistency of sitting down. And I had like a guided meditation that I did from Mia Magic. I downloaded one of her courses, and she had this guided meditation that asks you to, it's a very great visionary exercise that evokes emotionality around what does your future self or your dream life, what does it look like? What does it smell like? And it started using all of these really visceral physical senses ways to tap in. And instead of having it be my bank account's full, it's no, it's the stability in my body.
What is stability? So look for ways that you do have it in your life and really lean into that feeling. So even if there's this small, consistent thing in your life, every day I go and get my coffee and I have this nice moment with, this person in my life or whatever, that's stability, that feeling, really embody that and lean into that feeling. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's the gratitude piece, which yes, but I also do think at a certain point we have to begin to tell ourselves we're worthy of our wildest imagination. And it's radical. It's radical to tell yourself you're worthy of your wildest dreams. I get that. And I was so uncomfortable, and it took me a long time to trust that I could go into this and wait, I'm worthy of working for myself and having my own business. Some people want that so bad, and I wanted that so bad for so long. And I was prescribing to society's idea that I had to have a W-2 job and that was the only way that I could be successful. And I think that we have to kind of get away from what successful means, and that successful means X amount in your bank account, and successful means X amount of things that you own. Success is for me, it's am I supported in community by people who see me for who I truly, really am? Do I have control of my time in a way that I can nourish what I need to do? Do I have a self-love practice? Am I tapping in with friends and people in a way that allows me to show my creativity? That creating a life like that, that is what I think success can look like. And we have to begin to allow ourselves to imagine and feel What are our values? What is actually important to us? A great exercise to do this. I like things in threes. So what you do is you're going to write, you're going to take away. You're going to go into your imagination. Now you're going into your little imagination workshop. And this is just for fun. So it's all good. And you're in that workshop and you're going to ask your highest self if resources were never an issue. If you could have anything you needed to make anything happen, you had the support, your kids were taken care of, your bills were paid, your dog was loved, your partner, you could have no issues in creating this thing just for yourself. What would 3 days of your life look like? What would your perfect day at work? What would your perfect day of play and adventure? And what would just a day off with yourself look like? If you could have anything. And it doesn't even have to be like the job. It could just be like, well, I woke up and I had my cup of coffee while I looked out on a veranda of, a beautiful balcony overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And it's like letting yourself play with your imagination. That is how you get the emotional body to turn on.
Because your cells are listening in on your thoughts and aligning accordingly.
And we talked a little bit about this before. Imagination and play. The number one thing I think I've learned this year, and shout out to my amazing, community that have helped teach me this, is that play is a pivotal role in healing. Play. We gotta play. We're here to experience the full spectrum, and joy and play are so vital in raising our frequency and believing in ourselves. And again, like, what is going into the imagination and writing out 3 perfect days of your life, if you could have it all, if not playing with yourself?
Literally.
And so getting your body to connect with what's possible. I did that exercise after getting certified in human design, and everything that wasn't in line with that fell apart. And it was really scary. It was really scary.
So are you saying, because I was kind of thinking a minute ago when you were talking about what does success look like for you? So how often are people talking to you about, what they want to manifest, and they're like, say, I want a new car, or I want a really big house. And it's like, is part of it getting to why is that? What does that mean to you? Like, what does that provide for you to help people maybe see sometimes that they haven't really thought about what they truly want. They're just maybe thinking about what society has defined as success. And they haven't really thought about what would feel like, what it would truly mean for them. So like, what's underlying beneath that want?
Exactly. Like, what are the actual value pieces that you're trying to connect with that you're kind of masking with the material? And it's not that I don't think that we should like enjoy material things, but I really think where we're headed as a society, like the metrics in which we determine success is going to be way more focused on the well-being. Like, what is your well-being?
Because there's emptiness in, I think sometimes we are, and I'm, speaking for myself for a long period of time in my life, chasing things for external validation. So then I've got on this journey of like, well, what is money to me? More money is freedom. Freedom of time, freedom to be creative, freedom to connect with myself, freedom to slow down and actually like heal my nervous system. So that became the value of money versus, I want things for people to see the things so I can feel externally validated because I have not done the work to validate myself.
Well, and that is a perfect explanation of why manifesting is not a one-size-fits-all. If our way of expressing as humans is through sound, which is language, if language is the way in which we're connecting and co-creating our reality and working in, going through our epigenetics and reprogramming things, then why would it be one-size-fits-all when the language is malleable and it's our own experience of how we express language? And this is why I am so huge on like, let's give you the tools and the understanding so that you can empower and figure out how you will create your reality. Only you know that. And that's why I'm not big on these workshops of like, hey, come here and I'm going to teach you to get rich, or I'm going to teach you to do that. I think
there's manifestation content and they're like, it's this easy. is everywhere.
Well, and it could be that easy for certain people. I mean, I think about myself, and back in the day before I understood the system, like buying these online programs and doing these like boot camps and trying to, like, I'm like, why isn't this working for me? It's working for everyone else. It's not working for me. And then, I'm like, oh, well, because first of all, I'm supposed to wait to respond. And I'm over here trying to be like a bulldozer into like, chasing and certain things. And also it's because like, it's going to be the way I do it. And yours is going to be the way you do it. But there are little tools that we can learn to help us tap in. And so through that activity of, imagining what's possible in the emotional solar plexus, that sends a signal to our magnetic monopole in our heart and then draws it in.
That's why you hear people say, like, when I went on the retreat to Bali, there was a girl there. Her name was Haley. Hey, Haley. She's amazing. Yeah. And she said, I've been calling Bali in. I'm like, what does that mean? But that makes so much, you just explained that so beautifully, the concept of really embodying the vision and then drawing it to you
through the heart. If we can't feel it, we can't bring
which
it
is science backed.
Yeah, it is.
It's like and that goes along with like your frequency and like tuning into a frequency where the things that you want are existing, and you've gotten yourself tuned into that frequency. I think I'd love to chat a little bit about the frequency mismatch.
Oh yeah. In what way?
Like, just in the way that sometimes when you are living your life a certain way and you're doing work on yourself, you're doing healing work, you are on a journey and your frequency starts to elevate, you're letting go of resentment, you're letting go of anger, you're experiencing creativity and joy and lightheartedness. So your frequency is rising, but your life hasn't quite.
Oh, yes. I know this phase far too well. It is really interesting. It's like the thing I cycle back to over and over, like as like I was just saying, I got back from Egypt and I feel like I'm having another rebirth. I'm like, we just had one in February. You know what I mean? Like we just on 222 did a whole death and rebirth. And now I'm like, I'm feeling that again. I'm feeling that kind of like, oh wait, like I'm here, but this is where I'm at. And I think what always brings me back is just that continuous faith in divine timing, that continuous faith in like, I know that my heart is co-creating things that are going to be beneficial for me. And even when I'm out of alignment with my heart and I'm, I have shadows, like I love Deja Blue. I don't know if you follow her. She had a great podcast, but she calls her like shadow pieces, her gremlins. And she's like, sometimes my gremlins are out of the cave. And I'm like, I so adopt that. I'm like, oh my God, yes. Like sometimes I'm like, gotta go do the things and get raw. And then it's like, and I'm not going to make myself think that that's holding me back from where I'm still headed and this frequency rise. But I think there is this kind of like the trust piece.
It's coming.
And this system helped me a lot with that because I was able to wait to respond. And again, no matter what your type is, you will have to take a moment and be patient and step back and review the way that you do things. And that's what I think is super important. People are like, well, I'm a manifester. I don't have to wait. Every type, every person, we all can live a more cosmically aligned, intuitive life if we can just take a step back and review what we're doing. And it's kind of that age-old, toggle between dharma versus karma. Your karma is like when you're unconscious autopilot, and that's super important too. I need to be able to drive the car and do the things without thinking about it. And then there's the dharma piece where it's like, oh, like, can I make a conscious decision to not react to this and see like what else is coming forward before I make an assumption? And I think the more we can integrate that, the more we can begin to change our reality because we're more aware of it instead of being a victim of it.
Co-creating with the universe.
Yeah. And I do want to note too, like in my own revolution, there was a lot of loss in the beginning, as you come online with your authentic self. And I was just getting to know who she was. This system, being a generator, was really jarring for me. Like if you would have listed them out and told me about them, and before I ran my chart, I got to pick, like, that's not what I would have picked, you know?
What would you have thought that you were?
I mean, before you really learn about the whole system, it's like the word manifester just sounds so alluring, right? So I'm like, I'm a Brian manifester. No, babe. You're a generator.
I think manifester sounds fun because it's like, I just get all these great ideas and then I'm like, okay, bring them to life.
That's a lot of pressure, though.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
I'm surprised I'm not a manifester because I feel like
you have.
I'm a hybrid. But I've always been the big idea person, and then
because you're connected to that creative divine intelligence too, in a way that's just a little more speedy and connected. But I know from my own personal experience of like, when I began to look at the conditioning, I even like remember writing a poem right when I started learning about this. And the last line was, you know, because I woke up and decided to not be who other people wanted me to be. I was somebody who I realized, I was like, wow, I am showing up in rooms and putting on the show of what I think they want to see me do, because I thought that was what got me in other rooms and got me the raise, or got me the friend groups, or got me with the pretty girl squad, or from this and that. And it was like a really, really big adjustment to be like, oh my gosh, no. Like, I was in the spiritual closet for years. No one at my work, they knew I liked astrology, but they didn't know the extent of like how much I, you know, believed in source and manifestation and spirituality, and was studying all these things, and was going to mediums, or, you know, friends with people who do numerology. And, you know, I kept that close. And people that like my family knew, and like some of my friends growing up, but I really I wasn't that open about it. And it was kind of like stepping into my authenticity. I started really like getting curious. I would watch myself have interactions with people, and I would watch these interactions happen, and I'd be like, oh, that interaction was focused around pleasing them, the external validation. What do you actually want to say? And I started becoming really authentic in how I felt. And I found that authentic Nadia is like really soft, which I didn't expect. She's actually like really tender and soft, and a lot more like tapped in with feminine energy, and not as like kind of pushy and aggressive as I was being. And I had to really like step back and review myself and learn to wait to respond. And that process, that weeded a lot of people out of my life, and then it invited in some,
because you draw in your people that are meant to be there. You're the people that are aligned with who you are. Your authenticity is. That has been a very new journey for me, and it's been really rewarding. Yeah. It's been really great to see how just people like connecting with stuff on the podcast and being like, hey, I didn't know we had so much in common. Like, I would love to get together and talk about this. That has been just one of the most, it helps affirm me to be like, keep going, like keep being more and more authentic, like keep leaning into all the quirky things that make you you. That's what I was telling you. I have this vision of my podcast of being like Theo Vaughn meets Jay Shetty. Because like Theo Vaughn is like
he's so funny.
Like country like I am. Like when I really let my guard down, like that's how I sound. Like that's how I sound talking. And I love that he has somebody that he's like, he thinks of random things and he's like, hey, look that up. Like
okay, cool.
And it's like the most off the wall stuff. It's like ADHD dream to just like be all over the place. So, but I love that about him. It'd be like Theo Vaughn meets Jay Shetty, but like with a girly pop vibe to the aesthetic, you know?
I'm so here for that. Yeah. And I think like just to put a bow on that too, it's like, I think we're saying all of this to say that like, if it feels like loss, it's probably growth. And that's what it's like, let's talk about more empowering language for what we're going through, because we're all going to experience loss. We're all going to have obstacles. We're all going to come across things that are going to hurt us, and people are going to hurt us, and we're going to hurt people. But how can we begin to understand the human condition in a holistic way instead of making everything wrong? It's about growth. We are literally, the universe is fractalizing itself and expanding constantly, and we're a part of that.
Can we, I want us to close out and talk a little bit about, for one, the exclusive offer from this episode that we're going to give, how people can get in touch with you, but also I don't want to miss out on the 2027
Oh my goodness.
astrological prediction.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about quantum human design, when Ra Uru, who downloaded the system, was that there is a prophecy that in 2027, the chart is going to experience a mutation in the emotional solar plexus. And what this is going to do to society, our society has currently been running as a collective where the awareness of what we experience has been in the spleen. And because it's in the spleen, that means that it has been fear-based. And I think we can probably all agree that we kind of have been experiencing more of a fear-based culture.
Absolutely.
And so the idea is that as we shift from the spleen to the emotional solar plexus as our base awareness of understanding, we're moving into understanding each other through emotions, which is such a beautiful, amazing energy shift to look forward to, I would say.
Absolutely. I agree. I think we live in a fear and shame-based conditioning society. I've spoken about that in the education system alone, but then it also extends out into like the structures that we work in and how we just existing in the society in general.
Yeah, and I think like I can just feel that people, people's hearts are opening, people's hearts are breaking. I think sometimes our hearts have to break to open.
Agreed.
And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I just believe that we are moving towards a world where we will not only value humanity, but we will value someone else's life and their right to experience society and humanity in their own unique way. So I look forward to seeing kind of, like we can get through the next 3 years pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, it's kind of like...
What's that contraction, expansion?
The contraction before the expansion. We're kind of in that right now. So just like, don't lose faith, don't lose hope. And I know I'm kind of a hope dealer because like my name Nadia translates to hope. So I do feel like there's names and etymology, like that stuff takes root. And so I'm so incredibly hopeful for where we're headed. And I know that there's a lot of darkness on the planet right now and we're experiencing it. We're all experiencing it, whether if you're not experiencing some type of like reevaluation, contemplation, rebirth, whatever you want to call it, then like maybe look at that because that's what's happening on our planet right now and it's for a reason.
Thank you. That is beautiful. I've learned so much from you today. I'm so excited to keep going and learn more about my own chart. So much of what you said. Wow. So thank you for being here. Yeah. I want a couple things. I want us to announce our code for the giveaway. So Nadia QHD.
Yeah, Nadia QHD.
Nadia QHD as the code. And they need to send that to myself and you in a group message.
Yeah.
And then we'll have that. And then the first 50 people to send in that code after viewing this episode will be entered into a drawing. Yay. And then someone will win a free quantum human design session with Nadia.
I can't wait to meet you, whoever
it's
you are.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So also I want to close out with ways that people, and of course it'll be all linked in the resources, but ways that people can get in touch with you and your business and your resources.
I'm pretty active on Instagram, so that's like a really great, like kind of direct way. If you have any questions, I'd love to chat. I know we were kind of all over the place with the chart. I do have a free resource on my page that if you go into my links, it's a free intro to quantum human design, and it kind of breaks down an introductory, really like practical way to understand the system if you don't know much about it. So don't feel like you had to understand everything today. I've got that broken down for you, and then feel free to reach out and ask me any questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Nadia. See you next time.